once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
I'm not too bad. A little wet.
It's
been raining like crazy up here. We got severe weather popping up all over the place.
It's spring in Minnesota.
Yeah. And tornado season everywhere else.
Well, that's kind of why I got called into work tonight.
Oh?
Yep, I'm going to be doing a lot more overnights in about 2 weeks, but going to be doing some overnights this week because if there's a thunderstorm or tornado watch or warning, whichever one is, I don't remember, I don't care. All the residents have to get up and go into the bathroom because it's the safe room. And let me tell you something, Joe. There ain't nothing better in the world than being in a room with a bunch of irritated, tired, developmentally disabled adults that you woke up at 3 in the morning so that they could sit in the bathroom and listen to AM radio.
Well, yeah. Who else wants to? I mean, AM radio during a storm, you get that every time there's a lightning strike?
Yeah. And
I'd definitely go FM.
And the radios are from the 70s. No. We have to listen to...
There is no FM.
And we have to listen to WCCO, the local... it was a Clear Channel station, not Clear Channel the company, but Clear Channel in that no one else had the 830, so that if there was an emergency, they could boost their power and broadcast to a large section of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
See, I know that radio stuff. But I did not know about CCO till I moved here, and when I moved here in 87, WCCO was the station. I don't know why. I listened to it and got very bored, but you probably know a little more about why it was the station, because you've lived here your whole life.
Because we had a lot of old people that liked it.
Okay, what sort of stuff did it broadcast back then?
Old folk stuff. I didn't get it. I was listening to KDWB, which was AM radio, the type you get when you listen to Guardians of the Galaxy soundtracks.
Oh, so it's top 40.
Not CCO.
No, the KDWB.
Yeah. And CCO was more, had the folksy, down-home, shucks type guy. There were some guys, Boone and Erickson, they were pretty popular. They had some good skits and things like that. There were a couple guys, and I don't remember who had like a whole cast of characters with him, and they were all voices he did himself, and he intermixed seamlessly between characters to the point where people actually thought there were more than one person in the studio. People who would visit would be surprised to see it's just him in the studio holding this conversation with 5 different characters. But for the most part, CCO was kind of like if there was a tornado warning and you happened to be away from your television, that would be the station you'd turn to. Even you'd hear a lot of and miss probably right behind you. And I got to admit, there was a few times traveling around where you'd hear the tornado sirens go off, and okay, switch to CCO. You don't hear that, do you?
I hear something.
Oh, that's my weather radio going off.
Oh! Speaking of bad weather. Now, we had a local radio station in Canton, Illinois that there were times I would listen to it in the evening because they would play kind of soft rock. And it was usually because they'd hired a young kid out of college who was kind of making demo tapes to send to other radio stations.
Sure.
But during the day, it was very much, okay, baseball games. They had the Cubs, I believe. My grandfather, on my dad's side, absolutely loved listening to baseball on the radio. And if I'm going to watch baseball, I will actually turn on the radio to get the radio play-by-play. I like it much better than the TV play-by-play, probably because of that reason.
Well, the other thing that's fun with the local is that they're more excited for your team, whereas the guys on national TV got to remain neutral. And, yeah, there's a scored a touchdown. We're on the radio going, they said they got a touchdown! And that was something, too, with CCO. They had the Vikings. They had the Twins. They were the station. They had everything. And then, of course, as things went on, people outbid them for the sports and whatnot.
And they were always a CBS station.
Yes.
So
still is.
So I know a lot of people would listen to them at night when they would do the CBS Mystery Theater.
Here in CBS News, and of course they would do the news at the top of the hour, and then a little bit of local news and the weather. So you always knew you got the weather, top of the hour, a couple minutes after the CBS News.
I still remember when all radio stations had to, at the top of the hour, give the news and weather. It was federal law, but then they relaxed that at a certain point. And also, if you were a music station, you only had to do that during the day. So, like, by, I think it was 7 at night, you didn't have to do it anymore if you were primarily a music station.
And then, of course, the thing that always scared the crap out of me was this has been a test of the, had this been an actual warning, you should have kissed your ass goodbye.
But I do remember the CBS Mystery Theater. It was something that they even had back in Peoria. But when I came up here, that was really the only thing I'd listen to. And it was usually, I would do the sleeping overnights at the group home for teenagers. And they were to be in bed at 10, and staff would come in at 11. And, you know, you're just getting into work. You can't go, well, I'm going right to sleep. So I would take the little radio that they had that was also our alarm clock, and I would put it on, and I would listen to the CBS Mystery Theater. And then I don't remember when it went away, but one cool thing is that they're all available online now. You can listen to the entire run of CBS Mystery Theater, which I think was the last of the, quote, old-time radio shows.
Yeah, I never listened to that. I do remember KDWB on Sunday night after 10 would do 4 radio shows. Lone Ranger, Green Hornet, Gunsmoke, and I can't remember the fourth one because I never stayed up long enough to listen to it. Oh, Shadow. And I rarely got to the Bonanza one, but I always remember listening to Lone Ranger, Shadow, and then eventually I'd fall asleep and I wouldn't be able to listen to the other ones.
Now, my son became a huge fan of old-time radio to the point where last time he lived here, he actually had a 1 terabyte portable hard drive full of old radio shows he'd pirated. But the reason for that was when he was in junior high, we kind of got into a power struggle. And not a good idea to get into a power struggle with a dad who's been working in juvenile justice for longer than you'd been alive. And it was, okay, teachers say that you're not turning in your homework. What you need to do every day, bring me a note that says that you turned in your homework. And the teachers, will give you that note. All you have to do is ask for it. And he didn't want to ask for it. He would do the homework because he'd open his backpack and there all the homework would be. He just wouldn't turn it in. And he thought he could wait me out because it was, okay, it's been a week, you haven't done it, you don't get to play computer games. Okay, it's been another week, you haven't done it, you don't get to, do this. And eventually it got to the point where he was hanging out in his room all the time. And he found my old-time radio shows on CD, and he said, well, can I listen to these in my room? Sure. And he got hooked on George Burns and Gracie Allen. He got hooked on...
good stuff.
Yep, got hooked on Jack Benny, got hooked on Fred Allen, all of those. And to this day, he still listens to that stuff in his car, and whenever he and I go on a long car trip, at least 2-3 hours of it is spent listening to old-time radio. He is a big fan of Dragnet, though. His favorite show is Dragnet.
Dun, 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 dun.
The stories we are about to tell are true.
Did you ever see that one and Jack Webb and Johnny Carson doing the routine?
Yes.
Oh, folks, pause it and Google it. It's hilarious. If I ever meet Clyde from Clyde, I'll clobber him.
Well, another thing about Jack Webb...
Almost done with a straight face, too, on Johnny's part.
Another thing about Jack Webb that when you watch Dragnet, you'll see it's very deadpan. There's not a lot of actual acting. And what it was, Webb just wanted people to follow the procedure. He wanted to know how things are done. He didn't want them to be emotional because he felt that the emotion would kind of move you one way or another. So he would run the lines 3-4 times, and each time he'd go, less inflection, less inflection, less inflection.
Which actually worked for Harry Morgan.
And it worked for Jack Webb, too. And it made Dragnet a very different show. But I don't think you could get away with it today. Another thing I did not know, the show Adam 12 was another Jack Webb show. So now that we've talked about old people stuff, how was the convention?
Well,
it was
is that
Saturday and Sunday.
What? Is there someone at your door?
No, there's nobody at my door.
I thought I heard somebody knocking.
Nobody.
I'm positive.
You've given keys to everybody.
I heard my weather radio go out 2 rooms. I know I heard something in the background.
Fine.
Check it out. We really don't need this podcast interrupted by your fans.
Whatever. All right, fine, I'll go on.
Before he goes, I'm going to have to tell you, break a little kayfabe because he really hates it when I do this. This show's recorded before the con, so I'm going to have to blow it off, but we'll just pretend, So I'll talk about it the next podcast. So just you, me, and the other people. Don't tell Cory, though. He hates it when I break kayfabe.
Nobody there.
I could have sworn I heard somebody.
Yeah. You probably got the con crud or something.
Yeah, that could be.
So how was the convention?
It was fun. It was kind of tiring though. I think I'll just compose my thoughts. We'll talk about it maybe next show.
All right. Well, by the time this show airs, I will be a very, very happy man. You know why, Joe?
Oh, is it that time of year where you lather up yourself real good and take your annual shower?
No.
Oh.
4 episodes of Twin Peaks
Ooh.
are available because the first 2 were shown on Showtime, and then immediately after, they allowed the next 2 on the website. So 25 years in the making, that gum you like is about to come back in style.
Dun-dun-dun.
And the owls are not what they seem. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Although
we probably will be.
There should be a Twin Peaks comic book, goddammit.
You would think. They could do like with Babylon 5 too, and rather than just license it out and let people go nuts, incorporate it into the comic. Or into the show. There's got to be things on Twin Peaks that he hasn't explained and that he never will because he's got other things he's got to get to.
There was a Twin Peaks comic book in the planning.
Ooh.
When the magazine Wrapped in Plastic, which I always bought from you, was at its peak, it was being distributed through Diamond and it was selling really well. And a couple of comic creators pitched an idea to David Lynch to continue the story of Twin Peaks as a comic book. But it never quite came to fruition. Let me see if I can find a little more data on that.
What was it called? Wrapped in Plastic?
Yes, Wrapped in Plastic. And let's see here. There it is. Matt Haley said that he was going to put together a 3rd season graphic novel that would have been available with the DVD set when they came out. And it
cool.
was Matt Haley and written by Twin Peaks producer and story editor Bob Ingalls. Let's see if I could get some details on why it fell apart. He had a discussion with people. They were keen to use whatever notes they had for the proposed 3rd season because they were starting to plot out the 3rd season when the TV series got canceled. And they wanted to get away from the high school setting. They wanted to resolve the Cooper-Bob possession plot point. And then it would cut to 10 years later. and it would be a Twin Peaks where Cooper had quit the FBI and become the town pharmacist. Sheriff Truman had retired, and they mentioned they were going to have Cheryl Lee come back again, this time as a redhead. So, because Cheryl Lee played Laura Palmer, who was killed before the first episode, and then her identical twin cousin came in, and then the third season they were going to have her show up again, because first she was blonde, then a brunette. She would be a redhead the third season. So they were going to do something along those lines. And now instead we're getting a TV series.
Brilliant.
And I'm kind of glad.
I don't even know what's going on, but it's brilliant.
So, I've been reading some of these free comic books we got.
Me too.
And some of them I like, some of them I don't. Some of them
Me too.
Some of them I think do a really good job, and some of them just kind of fall flat.
Yeah, there is that.
But out of all the ones I have read so far, I don't know if this will sell a single comic, but man, it was fun. My favorite was I Hate Image by Scotty Young.
I read that one too.
Which has the lead character from I Hate Fairyland go through all of the Image books, killing off all the characters.
Yep.
And then goes and kills off the creators.
Why not? I just remember that because somebody made the comment about how Eric Larson was holding his pencil, which I guess is really how he holds his pencil.
Yes. And it's, where is it here? Yeah, that's how he holds his pencil. And people are like, yeah, that's how he draws. I have no idea how he draws like that. Because he really just kind of holds it kind of like he's getting ready to drop it. And then he draws like that. Yeah, I have no idea. If you didn't pick this one up, it is available out on Comixology as a digital download for free. Find this book. Oh, man, this is fun. Long as you're over 18, this is a really fun book.
And if you're under 18, just do what I told my mom when she found my Omaha the Cat Dancer collection. Mom, they're collectibles.
But there are a lot of art jokes, a lot of inside jokes. Pokes fun at everything from Spawn to Walking Dead.
One that I picked up, what I like about Free Comic Book Days, gives me a chance to try something that I probably wouldn't shell out cash for. They had one from Archie called Riverdale, which is based on apparently the new hit TV series that's on CW. Yeah,
it got renewed for another season, and it is now, as of today, available on Netflix already.
Well, after reading the comic, I am pretty sure this is a version of Archie I don't really care about. Because I didn't find any of the characters likable. I didn't find many of them that interesting. Maybe if I watch the show, it might change because, you're watching them act versus just, static on paper. But there's also a tie-in comic book that goes along with it. And I'm kind of, it happens sometimes you read a comic book and you're like, well, I'm glad I got that for free because it's probably something I'd be very disappointed with had I actually bought it. So, now, I do like the regular Archie line, and I did like the Afterlife with Archie, but as we talked about before, who's the guy working on Riverdale that was working Afterlife with Archie?
Sciarra.
Yeah, so we probably won't see much Afterlife with Archie anyways. Which is probably a good thing, because there weren't many people left.
Or Sabrina. He was doing the, what is that called? The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that too. They even they had some one-shots that were coming out, and I know the Sabrina one was canceled.
Big Moose came out.
They canceled there was like a best of Sabrina coming out. That was best of like the classic stuff, and they canceled that too. My guess would be probably not enough sales for it, but kind of disappointing. What was next in your bag of tricks?
Let's stick with Archie. I was disappointed that they one of the books that they put out was a reprint of Betty and Veronica #1. Now, why was I disappointed? Because, well, first off, they haven't put out a lot of Betty and Veronica issues because it's written and drawn by Adam Hughes, so, it's going to be horrendously, unbelievably late. But also, hey, here's the first issue. So if you bought the first issue, you kind of feel a little like a chump. And one of the things that I wish they do with Free Comic Book Day books is, hey, here's some new stuff. Maybe instead of doing the first issue of Betty and Veronica, have a short story for Archie, Betty and Veronica, Reggie and Me, Jughead, the books that they're doing as kind of a sampler. Because I would say that if you're interested in Betty and Veronica by Adam Hughes, you already picked it up. And especially if it's, here's a free reprint of it, and okay, yeah. I just don't think it used the free comic book idea well. It was a good book, one of my favorites of last year, but it really felt like, this is one I can pass on.
I picked up the Star Trek The Next Generation Mirror Broken.
Yes, I have that too.
I liked it. I don't know why I don't buy a lot of Star Trek comics. Probably because the same reason I don't buy a lot of the Star Trek books. And for a while there, if you listen to the older podcasts, I was reading one like every other week. A lot of it has to do with cost. Another problem with a lot of Star Trek comics is they tend to break down into what you call talking heads. It works fine if you're listening to them, but it's real tough to do and do it interestingly. This comic didn't have that problem. What they're essentially doing is they're revisiting the Mirror Universe. This is a prequel, which makes me think that it will not be printed again until it shows up in a graphic novel format. So if you do pick up Mirror Broken, see if you can't pick this up. It's fun. I mean, there's something wrong right away. You look at the cover. First of all, you see Picard's in a manly show-off-my-bicep uniform. Troy's behind him, and of course she's dressed very seductively. And there's a lot of Borg attachments on Data. So right away you got my attention. They talk a little bit about writing this, and what they did a great job of using Barclay to try to get us introduced into this universe. And it's just a short, quick story. And I guess this month, Mirror Broken should be out. And this is one I think I might have to go out of my way to pick up, especially if it's a miniseries. A lot of times they do delve into the Mirror Universe just as a plot device in the regular book, but I think if they leave this as a standalone, it could be a lot of fun. The second part is a little preview of the ongoing. Well, they do kind of a quick preview of all sorts of the books, which is what they should do in Free Comic Book Day to try to get my attention as to whether or not I'm going to spend money on this. They do Star Trek Boldly Go, which they gave you a taste of it, not enough to really make it interesting. And then, of course, Star Trek Green Lantern Stranger Worlds, which after reading the first one, I decided I wasn't going to read any more of it. Waypoint was interesting because they're back in the original series again. And it's kind of interesting, just enough teaser, to kind of get me interested to try to think, I might have to check this out. So for a Free Comic Book Day issue, this was actually very good. Got my interest in 2 of the series, so I guess you got a 50% ratio going here, which is pretty good.
And J.K. Woodward's art in the first part was... At first, it was like, wow, this isn't really as colorful, but as the story went on, it fit. It fit that the Mirror Universe would be darker. It fit that the Mirror Universe wouldn't have primary colors. It fit that his art fit the story very well. I liked that it picked up however many years later after the original Mirror Universe story, but they actually reference back to it where, okay, you know how Spock at the end of Mirror Mirror was going to try and change things? Well, that didn't work out, and it actually caused a lot of problems for the Federation. There's a whole new setup here, and it drew me in, and like you, I want to read the rest of it now. The Waypoint story just confused me, because it's okay, Geordi is on the bridge and everybody else is Data. Huh? What? Where is this from? And it's the problem I have with a lot of the Star Trek, Star Wars stuff. And the problem with it is that when you get into these Star Trek stories and you get into the Star Wars stories, after a while they've been off in their own world so much that they've developed all these odd things. And unless you've been reading it all along to see all the changes, you're like, who are these people? What's going on? Why is Geordi the captain of a ship and everybody else on the ship is Data? Explain that. I don't get it.
Well, maybe that's why they're trying to get you to pick up the series.
But for me, it just confused me to the point where it's like, yeah, I don't want to invest in that.
I don't know. I was curious about that big block thing that they're looking at. Looks suspiciously like a Borg. But I guess we'll find out.
Yep. The next book that I picked up that I was disappointed in, and every year this book disappoints me, although this year it didn't disappoint me as much, is the Overstreet Guide to Collecting. And what it is, what it should be, is here's an introduction to how to collect comics. You know, it should be, here's what Overstreet does, here's how we get our prices, here's how to start collecting books. This year it was a little more comic book and a little less tons of tiny type. And when it has a center thing about comic book ages that is really just, it's Robert Overstreet who says, well, you know, there were comic books before the Golden Age, and those are really important, and people should be collecting them, which means that he got his hands on those. I still remember when the prices on EC all of a sudden jumped up, and somebody said, oh, yeah, Robert completed his EC collection, so now the prices on ECs are going to be shooting through the roof. So on the older stuff, things he gets interested in, the prices tend to go up after he's got them.
That's always the dirty little secret that I've heard. Now, I read this too, but what I found it interesting is that this is kind of almost, to me, a good primer for someone who's, like, never collected comics before. It's also a guide to the big books and guides that he sells too, which was a little more annoying because you'd be flipping a page and you're like, oh, okay, now he's talking about his original art guide. Okay. I would keep a lot of these around, and if somebody comes in that's new to comics, this would be the type of thing I would hand them to say, well, this kind of talks a little bit about collecting, but there's a lot more to it than just, you know, collecting for money or investment or creators or however you choose to do your collection. As, you know, Cory and I say over and over, it's more fun to read.
And one of the issues that I have is that it's very clear that this is by older people. Because it's, oh, here are the top 5 horror comics, and they're all stuff from the 40s and 50s. Here's the top 5 horror comics. It's not the most expensive ones. It's, you know, here's what they call key issues. Since this is going out to new readers, I'm sorry, a new reader's not going to go, well, I need to get that first Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos from 1963. It
you know what's funny?
About how to navigate the current market.
This is almost the opposite of what, if we were around when Wizard would have been publishing, because we would have been kvetching like, you guys are giving me the top 10 books, and you're not even looking at anything Silver Age or Golden Age. And then they got around to, okay, well, we're going to put in Action Comics #1. Why? Nobody's going to buy an Action Comics #1 at a Wizard price.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's kind of like, yeah, I'll give you that this is skewed towards older readers, but I'll also say it's probably good at that, because then these people realize, you know, there is something more to comics than just the current issue, whatever you're picking up. I mean, a lot of that's how I got to learn about the Silver Age and the Golden Age. And when I finally bought the first Overstreet price guide. There was so much more to read in it than just the prices. So, we don't have the Wizard counterpoint anymore. We don't have anybody saying, oh, these are the top 10 collectible comics that you must buy.
But for this, if you're reaching out to new collectors, it should be, here's how to preserve your comics. Here's why you put them in a bag.
Well, that's why you buy the price guide.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can't, you could make the thing twice as thick and still not be able to cover everything.
Yeah.
Still, I would say, I guess I'm more positive on this because to me this was much more impressive just as something, here, read this. This will help you with comics.
Except, and here's 5 pages on stuff from the 1800s you're never going to fucking buy.
No, but you should know about.
Right, but you're going to do 5 pages on that and nothing on the most collectible comic of the last 20 years, Walking Dead. Okay?
I don't think Overstreet isn't to be used for pricing out Walking Dead because Overstreet's terrible with new books. It's good with Golden Age up to Bronze Age, but anything after that, they're terrible with. And one of these days when I get around to my eBaying podcast, I'll explain how I look up stuff. And a lot of it has to do with just looking on eBay to see what the price is. There's books in my collection and on eBay that I have put that price for $50 to $100. You look in the price guide and they just say, cover price. Or if it's not listed, it's cover price. And they're wrong. Because like you said, Overstreet only cares about the older stuff. Again, if Wizard was around, we'd have a counterpoint to that. We'd say, okay, give them this, give them the Wizard guide. But Wizard is no more. They're just putting on crappy cons.
Yeah. And really, there was, I would say the first 10 years of Wizard, they were worthless anyway. Because they were putting high dollar prices on books that weren't even out yet.
Yeah.
Hey, this comic that was supposed to be out 2 months ago and isn't out yet is already selling for $20. No, it's not. Because it never came out.
I can tell you, though, as a retailer, Wizard sold phenomenally.
Oh, yeah.
It drove a lot of people. It got people interested in books, got people interested in artists. Yeah, it was fanning its own hype. But, I have really nothing bad to say about Wizard the magazine because it was... back then when I had to price comics, I had to use the Overstreet guide. There was a thing called Comic Shop Prices, was just a black and white type guide that came out monthly, and Wizard. And between the three, you could figure out what the price is. Nowadays, you just go on eBay or Atomic Avenue or Comic Pros or whatever, and you can find out what a collectible comic is worth. But back then, you didn't have it. I mean, so many times I'd have dealers calling me up. Oh my God, what did you price your last Valiant at? Well, about $100. Oh man, I sold it for $70. I lost $30. Oh,
I always love that. I lost money.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
You did.
How much did you pay for it?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, in the golden age of comic pricing, you would price a book so that it would stay on your shelf for a certain amount of time. Brand new, the shop that I helped out at before I moved here, there was a Gru one-shot that came out from Eclipse that was poorly distributed, and Eclipse wasn't with certain distributors, so a lot of places didn't get it. So it was hot book. And the dealer actually drove he drove up to another shop and bought, they would trade stuff, and he brought back 10 of them. And for the people who'd ordered it from the on their pull list, he sold it to them at cover price. So he had 6 left. So he put it up at $1 over cover price, and it sold that day.
By the way, $10 now on eBay. I remember when it used to be a $50 book.
And then it's like, okay, well, let's put it up for $5 over cover price. And it sold in 3 or 4 days. Okay, that price is obviously too low. Put up the next one, $10 over cover price. It took about 3 weeks to sell. Okay, we found about the price. Then it picked up again. So basically, the way you would raise your price is you want that book to stay on the shelf for at least 2 weeks. For one reason, your customers, your customers come in about every 2 weeks. And if they want the book, they're going to see it and they're going to want it. And after 2 weeks, everybody's pretty much seen it. That's how we price things in the shop back then. So books would rise. There were times when, this book's selling really well. Comic Buyer's Guide says it's worth $40. He'd put $40 on it, and it'd sit there for 6-7 months till he dropped it to $20, and then somebody buy it going, well, the price guide says it's worth $40. Yeah, well, I haven't been able to sell it at $40, so $20's great. And that's kind of how it was before the price guide boom of the late 80s, early 90s. But I had a lot of problems with Wizard. There was stuff behind the scenes that I didn't care for. There was stuff they put in the comic I didn't care for. And their price guide, while it was good for some things, it also, I still remember, Joe, get a bucket.
Nope. Not I'm going to put my fingers in my ear and hum.
All right. Deathmate Yellow was listed as a $25 book. It came out a year later.
It was close, but I held it.
Oh, that's good. What's the next book you read?
We've talked about this before, and I probably won't bore people too much with it because that's what you're here for. Secret Empire.
Bite me, fanboy.
Which was great because it gave me a chance to read it. It was interesting. I pretty much committed. I'm probably going to just buy the book when it comes out. I'm not going to get sucked into it and read the crossovers and all that other fun stuff. My guess is this is an original story because it sounds like it leads right into Secret Empire #1, which is on sale now.
Yes, this is
which
an original
is nice.
Story.
They give it, and that's nice too, which also gives you a reason why you want to pick it up. The other thing I thought was interesting is they gave a preview of Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man #1, which after reading it, I'm like, I guess that's a Spider book I'm not going to buy.
Really? I liked the story.
It didn't do much for me. It was, I don't know, maybe I'll wait and see what it's like when it comes out, but I just wasn't, I'm not looking to buy new books, but I do at least appreciate the fact that I got a chance to sample it. So you're 50% on this one, Marvel. Are you going to get me on the graphic novel? I might have to wait for the soft cover, but yeah, the Peter Parker, I don't think I want to. I'll pass.
I think Marvel was really smart with this one by having, here's a chapter that kind of explains how the heroes fell. Cool. And then, we have this new Spider-Man book that we're really going to be pushing. Let's have a short story. And the thing I liked about the story was it had a beginning, middle, and end. Rather than, here's the first few pages. Here's a sample. Nope, this was a full Spider-Man story. Yes, there were plot threads left over that made you go, I wonder where they're going with that. And it also showed that Chip Zdarsky, who did all kinds of fun books, is a good Spider-Man writer. I'm looking forward to his run on the book. One of the major 2 books that didn't work for me is the Wonder Woman from DC. Once again, just like Betty and Veronica, it just reprinted the Wonder Woman story from a few months ago. And if you've already bought it, again, it feels like a waste because by this point, Wonder Woman's been going for 20-some issues. You're either reading it or you aren't. Yes, there's a Wonder Woman movie coming out, but Rebirth was one of their best-selling books. Highest-selling Wonder Woman book in ages. Oh, look, here it is again. Why not have an original story? Why not have kind of a hint as to what's coming up with Wonder Woman? Or, like Secret Empire did, here's a chapter that leads into the next story, rather than, here's a reprint, enjoy.
Well, they could have done a prequel to the movie. Marvel's always big on that.
I think that would have worked, too. To me, it felt like DC just kind of whiffed it this year because they had that, and then their kids' book was the Superhero Girls, which, that's good. But it's not
they've
like
got a big-ass crossover coming up, don't they?
Yes, they do. That's actually creating a whole new line of books.
Oh, maybe that's why I'm kind of meh. I barely buy the ones you got now, and you're going to give me a whole new line. Ooh.
Yeah.
But
So,
they really,
Woman, another miss.
They had a chance to, get me interested in it, because even now, I think I don't recall. I think I ordered the first part in previews, but I decided not to order the second part. So, I grabbed the other Marvel book they offered. It was Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I've been reading the Bendis one it seems forever. All the way back to Annihilation. So I was kind of curious as to what they were going to do with a new creative team. And yeah, this just didn't do it for me. I wasn't keen on the art. I didn't like the characters. I don't know if they're just trying to shoehorn it more like the way the movie is, but whereas I enjoyed the movie, I just didn't enjoy this. And I'm thinking, even though the all-new Guardians of the Galaxy, as opposed to Guardians of the Galaxy Now, or whatever else Marvel uses to really gum up my tracking systems, number one's on sale twice a month, meh. Maybe I'll come back and look at it. Now, the second part of the book was The Defenders by Bendis. Hey, there's that name again. And this was one that, okay, I'm an old school Defender guy where a bunch of heroes get together and they're fighting things and they're a non-team and yada yada schmackety schmack. But this one actually got my attention. It opens up as some guys coming into Alias Investigator Service and talking to Jessica Jones and relating to them how Cage and Daredevil broke up and Iron Man broke up his scheme, and basically it sounds like, I don't know if this is are these two again original stories, or are these?
Yes, they're both original.
That's a good way to do it. Now, I know Defenders 1 is out, number 2 may be out. I definitely am going to have to pick these up. If they're not out yet, I definitely will be looking for them. And Defenders was one that I was cold on, and because of the preview at Free Comic Book Day, I'm going to get it. So, again, another 50% books. Guardians I was less interested in, but the Defenders is something, if I don't pick it up in book form, I'll be picking up the individual issues on. I don't know. I don't think there was anything else they had. A couple house ads for things. But, so Marvel's 2 books, I'd give them 100% because, 50% on each book. It adds up.
The next book on my stack here is from Titan Books. It's the Doctor Who 4 Doctors, What a Sounding Story.
I got that one too.
Was a little bit of a cheat because you look at the cover and you go, oh wow, all 4 Doctors interacting. No, it's a thing that all 4 Doctors dealt with. And they have the creative team for each of the Doctor Who series currently running do a portion of the story. Kind of like the old Justice Society, where the Justice Society would get together, and then they would split off to do stuff, and each one would be done by the regular creative team on their own books, and then they'd get back together at the end. This was a lot like this, and it was a good sampler book. It was a Doctor Who puzzle. It felt like a Doctor Who story. In having all 4 Doctors from the new run, you really got to feel the difference between each of them and why they were different, which I really enjoy. I like the contrast, because too often people write the Doctor as the Doctor as the Doctor, no matter what his face is. But this showed that the writers take a lot of care to understand the differences between the different Doctors. This was a great sampler, and it made me want to pick up the Doctor Who stuff. But the thing that Titan did in the back that made me really happy was the Reader's Guide. Okay, you want to read about the 12th Doctor? Here are the trade paperbacks for that. You want to read about the 11th Doctor? Here are the trade paperbacks for that. If you want to read about the 10th Doctor, here are the trade paperbacks for that. If you want to read about the Ninth Doctor, here are the trade paperbacks for that. Here are the ones about the previous Doctors. Here's the order that they go in.
Doctor, give me the who. I got a bad case of reading news.
But I would say you would give this to someone who didn't know there were Doctor Who comics, and they'd want to buy them.
Which is pretty much most of the universe.
Yeah. And I think this is probably one of the best uses of Free Comic Book Day to kind of get people to go, oh, wow, I want to read these. Which, no matter what, Free Comic Book Day, these comics are promotion. You know, the shop is paying a lower price for them, and the publishers probably aren't paying the biggest page rates for them in hopes that people will read them and buy these books. So this one, actually, one of the things I've kind of held off on is, they're putting out so many Doctor Who books. But now it's like, I'm probably going to have to pick these up.
Oh, yeah. Meanwhile, in a Pineapple Under the Sea, they were having No Charge Funny Book Day. Everybody loves No Charge Funny Book Day. Why, it's the day that the graphic literature shops all provide gratis samples of their wares in a pathetic effort to booster an industry which has spent the last 2 decades in a death spiral brought on by lethal interaction between lack of variety and a monopolistic distribution system. Hooray! Folks, if you haven't read the SpongeBob Freestyle Funnies comic, you got to pick this sucker up because it is fantastic. It skewers the comic industry and pretty much everything else in a very humorous way. And, of course, it means they're giving away free comic books, which, of course, when Mr. Crab gets involved, you know something is going to go terribly wrong. So, and the puns are there. I mean, of course, when they finally get to the comic store, you know, you look at them all. There's Mermaid Man, Civil Disobedience 2, Richie Fish, Sushi's Pal Slughead, Gil Eisner's A Contract with Neptune, Rock Bottom Splendor, Trench of Horror. It's fantastic. You know, Barnacle Boy's Cavalcade of Cynicism, Funless Funnies, Fred Periwinkle's Esquire, arf, 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 all free. I'm not a big SpongeBob guy anymore because my kids are old enough where I don't have to listen to it, watch it anymore. But this was a lot of fun. And, you know, unless you take your comics way too seriously, you probably might want to avoid it. But if you would just want something that's manic, joyous fun, this is it. And besides, it's free.
I have a confession, Joe.
Do we have special music for confession?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, we should make some.
I have never seen SpongeBob SquarePants.
That's nothing to be ashamed of. You're an old fart. You're not expected to.
Well, and not only that, my son never much cared for it.
Well, he's a weirdo then.
He was more an Invader Zim guy.
Oh, now I definitely know he's a weirdo.
And anime, you know.
Mm-hmm.
SpongeBob SquarePants just didn't appeal to him. He never watched it, so it wasn't ever on at my house. So it wasn't really until the movie came out that I went, I guess this is kind of a big deal, isn't it? Are they still making new episodes?
I have no idea.
But, no, I've not read that. Although,
you should read it because you will enjoy it. Because you'll get most of the references because it's definitely for comic guys.
I did read Buffy the High School Years, which was the Dark Horse all-ages book. It's hyping the new Buffy graphic novels and then also featuring Plants vs. Zombies. And I suppose if you would be interested in this stuff and you would be younger, you would like it. My problem with the Buffy story was that Buffy really didn't do anything. There was no drama involved. No one was in peril. It was just kind of, vampire shows up, Buffy kills it. And the thing about Buffy the Vampire Slayer was that it was witty, the characters interacted well, and we already know a lot about the high school years. But when Buffy just, when she could kill a vampire just by not doing anything, because, she's a slayer and she's done it so many times, you have to kind of amp up the villainy. And in this, if this was the first Buffy thing I'd ever read, it would not make me want to read it. And Plants vs. Zombies made no sense whatsoever. Oh, it's Plants vs. Zombies, except the zombies are kind of helping out the humans who are helping out the plants, and then the plants go and do their own thing and have nothing to do with the zombies, and they're in the Old West, and they need to get a time machine. Oh, they found the time machine, they're back to where they were, and I know it's a game that used to be popular on cell phones, kind of like Farmville, but there was nothing in it that made me remotely interested in it, because it just felt like, hey, here's a bunch of colorful drawings. So, sorry, Dark Horse, you did not impress me enough to be interested, and I am a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. No, Dark Horse. Put your head down low and go to the back of the catalog.
What's your next book, Joe?
Well, when criminals in this world appear and break the laws that we should fear and frighten all who see and hear, the cry goes out both far and near for Underdog. I love Underdog. It's one of my favorite cartoons as a kid. I just remember it fondly. I will not be picking up the Underdog comic, though, because, again, what works really well in the cartoon does not seem to work so well, at least not in this particular version of Underdog. American Mythology is doing a wonderful job of taking these different properties and running with them. But I don't know, it just didn't work for me. It just doesn't have the Underdog magic. Maybe it's because I was, 4 when Underdog was on? 5? I don't remember. They do
one of those cartoons that was on other than Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
That's
and I always thought it's Saturday
on,
morning.
Like weekdays or Sundays.
Yeah, it'd be. I do admit the one thing that I did find funny, and if I can find it here. Let's see. They did it. They had original. I think it's original story or a reprint, and they also took one of the old. It'd have to have been a Gold Key comic and run it. So it's kind of fun to see the older version and the newer version. And where is it? I thought there was an episode with Commander McBride in here somewhere. Or maybe I was hallucinating it. It's been known to happen.
How much have you been drinking tonight, Joe?
I'm only halfway through a glass of water. Although if you astute listeners could hear the thunder in the background. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. This is a good primer for people. You let me stick with the songs, please. Dang, I'm just paging through this. I can't find it. I thought for sure I read something. Because I just remember thinking that was probably the most fun part of the book. But this is a good primer for American entertainment comics, or what they call American mythology comics, because they cover the different books they're doing: Casper, Rocky and Bullwinkle, Pink Panther, and what's the other ones they got? Oh, the Three Stooges. So they have it. One thing I do notice going through a lot of the books is that they do say, "Hey, come pick up these comics at." Oh, there it is. It's right on page 3. The World of Commander McBride. I actually enjoyed that. Because he talks, if you've seen episodes of Underdog, in the middle it was either Tennessee Tuxedo, Go Gophers. I'm trying to think, that was a Dudley Do-Right in there. They had some other cartoons, and then they do these little quick one-shots of World of Commander McBride. And, it was just it's a one strip just lined up for a good, decent pun. And you know me, I love my puns. So, anyways, Underdog was an interesting comic. It's all ages. And, I got a chance to sample it for free, and it's not for me.
Next book that I wanted to bring up is one that I really, really liked, even though I don't know if it's a good free comic book day book, and that's the Bongo Free-for-All.
Oh, did you like it? Did you really, really like it?
I look forward to this book every year. I have no idea if it gets anybody to buy the Simpsons comics, which I enjoy. But it's like having another issue of the Simpsons. There's a long lead story, and then back up the Todd and Rodyssey, where Todd and Rod go through kind of a version of the Odyssey.
Yeah, that was good.
And, you know, it felt like a regular issue of The Simpsons, although you look through it and it doesn't say, hey, there's a monthly Simpsons comic. It's, okay, here's an ad for the latest Bart Simpson trade paperback. Here's an ad for the latest Simpsons trade paperback. Nothing about, hey, there's also, you know, a Futurama comic, and here's the Simpsons comic, and it comes out every month. So I don't know if this sells Simpsons comics, but boy, every year they put together a really fun book. And thank you, Bongo, for putting out a nice little Simpsons comic for me that I didn't have to pay for this year. Joe? Hello?
Another one that I was curious about was The Legend of Zelda, because I love playing the Legend of Zelda games. One of these days I'll actually download some of the original ones on my Wii. Yes, I still have a Wii. And this one had a reprint in manga style of The Legends of Zelda, Twilight Prince, and Ocarina of Time. And after reading it, I realized, these are probably not aimed at me. I didn't quite understand what was going on. I didn't know who the characters were. Their names that although I played the game, I don't recognize. I mean, I recognize Link constantly. But, yeah, these tend to come out in manga-sized books, and they have the series, available now at your local comic store. I think almost all manga should do something like this just to try to get people interested in it, but, you do run the risk, like with me, it's not anything that I liked and nothing that I will probably go out of my way to pick up. Oh, I'm just a fuddy-duddy with these, aren't I?
The next book that I read that I enjoyed is Defend Comics. Now, normally the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund puts out a free comic book that has, updates on what's going on, stories about the history of censorship in comics. But this time they teamed up with First Second Books. And instead, they had samples of the First Second Books trade paperbacks and things like that with short stories that had to do with censorship. And the first one is a new Jeffrey Brown book, hyping his new series Lucy and Andy Neanderthal, which I didn't even know was coming out. And I don't know if I've talked about it in the past. I love Jeffrey Brown's stuff. I've loved it since he did his autobiographical stuff. He's made a lot of money off the Vader and Son, Vader and Daughter books. Joe, you've seen those, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And now he's doing another series that's kind of aimed at kids. And all of these stories are aimed at kids, as is most of the stuff First Second does. And it's kind of alternative cartooning for kids. And while I miss having the little thing that says, here's what the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund has been up to this year, I do, they are putting out like a quarterly or twice a year comic that has that. So,
and you can always go to their webpage too.
Yeah. But this one was a lot of fun to read. Even though it's aimed at kids, the stories and the cartooning is good enough that I enjoyed it. And while, some of these I won't pick up, some of them I will. So, Comic Book Legal Defense Fund teaming up with a small press publisher, I think they should do that every year. Joe?
Well, I guess it was only a matter of time, says the judge as he's standing over Judge Dredd's dead body. Yeah, that got my attention. I checked out the 2000 AD Free Comic Book Day sampler. I love Judge Dredd. I remember my first exposure to it was at Event Comics, and I don't know where they started, but they went chronologically. So as the series kept going forward, it was fun. You know, we ran into Judge Anderson, we ran into Judge Death. They had like Mega City War or something, and then they went crazy and started to do more than an issue. They had like 3 or 4 titles, and I lost track. And I've always regretted losing track of where Judge Dredd is. So it's kind of fun to sit back and be able to read this. I wish somebody would do. I think did they do a series of reprints from the beginning?
Yes. What it was, Quality started them, and then, because they started with Brian Boland, and then they went back and did Judge Dredd, the early cases.
Yeah, I remember those.
But one of the things that Titan Comics is doing, although I think Rebellion, which publishes 2000 AD, kind of has taken it over, they were doing the Judge Dredd Case Files, which reprints every Judge Dredd story chronologically in nice, big, thick, $25 books.
Yeah, and there's how many of those already? 30?
Oh, something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But, man, those early volumes. The thing about Judge Dredd in the real early days is it's pretty much fully formed. They add to the mythology, but there's very little from those early stories that isn't still around. And those early stories, especially the ones by Brian Boland, man, they were good. The Cursed Earth, the first Judge Death stories, the first appearance of Cy Judge Anderson. That's phenomenal, phenomenal stuff. 2000 AD, I haven't read it yet this year. Last year they got in trouble because they had too many pages.
Uh-oh.
And they were told that they could only do a certain number of pages because I think last year they either had 48 or 56. And Diamond was like, well, these books are too big. But 2000 AD is one of those books that every so often I go, oh, yeah, I remember that, and I pick up a batch and I enjoy it.
Yeah. And I enjoyed this one. I mean, they have this story. Oh, by the way, just in case you're all worried and you're rushing right now to your 2000 AD, no, it wasn't. Judge Dredd isn't dead. But
it got better?
No, go read it. I'm not going to tell you. But they did that, and then there was Black Blood General Public, which is kind of an interesting black and white story. Slain, Anderson's Psi Division, which another story I enjoyed, and then a really spooky Dreams of Dead World with Judge Death. And again, a good sampler of what's going on. The only thing that's missing really is just of course, this is more an ad for the magazine. You know, it'd be nice to know if there were any books or anything that's available, something that I could pick up, you know, like I want to and try to get caught up in this stuff. But I enjoyed it, and this year it was comic book size as opposed to magazine size, so I was able to at least carry it about without it getting, you know, crumpled and ruined. I hate crumpled and ruined. Cory, what was your last one?
Rick and Morty.
That was the one Butch was raving about.
I love the show. I love the comic. And the thing about this one is, once again, they use Free Comic Book Day to hook you. These are the first parts of new stories. So you read it, and it's they're both to be continued. One is for the regular series. One is for a special mini-series. They even have a one-pager for another spin-off series that's already out. And, well, Rick and Morty is, I think the best way to describe it is, imagine if Back to the Future, instead of traveling in time, they travel through parallel dimensions. Doc Brown is actually Marty's grandfather, and he's an alcoholic who uses traveling through different parallel Earths to commit a lot of crimes. I always tell people, the show is weird when they completely screw up their original Earth. They completely screw it up. They go to a parallel Earth that's as close to theirs as possible, kill the versions of themselves there, bury them in the backyard, and just go on as if nothing's happened.
Nothing happened. Don't look here.
And the show carries that on. Every so often they reference it, but it's nope. We screwed up our Earth. This is our second chance. So it's very dark comedy, very science fiction comedy, and I love it so much. What was your last book, Joe?
I picked up The Tick. Free Comic Book Day. New stories. And
good. They do it. They have to do a new Tick comic every year, a Free Comic Book Day, and they say, hey, there's a new series coming. And by the time next Free Comic Book Day comes out, it's like, hey, there's a new series coming.
Well, and as far as I can tell, this had nothing to do with the new series coming up that Doug's doing. Because that's the one thing I was looking through, kind of like, I hope they show a little sneak of it, but nope, nothing to be sneak. But they did have Tick's birthday party, and of course, Tick loves a good fight during his birthday party, so if you like Tick, this is probably the book you should be reading. And it is fun. They do a good job in the back of showing all the different comics that are, or I should say they call them the complete work collections, including the original Ben Edlund collection. So this was a fun all-around book. Again, no real primer to tell you, hey, something new's coming, you should check it out. Although it did a good job of not only telling you, okay, these are the books you can pick up if you like this, and in the front they make an offer that you could pick up previous Free Comic Book Day issues if you want. Apparently they've got 5 available, since you have the 6th one in your sweaty little hands. Spoon!
You know who also likes to give you stuff that you'll enjoy?
Who's that?
These guys, our sponsors.
That's right. Here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network, we have ads, and our first sponsor is me. That's right. Your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. I have my first book out with Dangerous Dan Moore. It's the first 100 strips of our online web strip, Worldwide News, the story of the lowest rated cable news network. And you can get yourself a copy with commentary, with all sorts of extras, with signatures and everything. Just email Dan over at lordshadowflame@gmail.com. Our top sponsor, who's been with us since day one, is DreamHost. DreamHost.com. You need yourself a website, and DreamHost.com is the #1 web host in the whole known universe. Just head over to DreamHost.com, put in the code KRAYZ, KRAYZ, get $20 off your first year. How can you beat that? Our other sponsor is Graze, GRAZE.com. Healthy snacks for a healthy lifestyle. Just head over to Graze, put in the code CORYS 3R5P. Your first and 5th box are free. You could get them weekly. You could get them bi-weekly. You could get them monthly. You just order a whole bunch of them. It's great stuff to keep you away from the vending machine at work. Now, if you would like to leave a comment for any of the podcasts that we do, we'd love those. Go ahead and email us at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, or you can call 952-856-0519. Operators are standing by. Okay, it's just a place that will record your calls, but we'll play them on the air. We'll answer your questions. We love getting feedback. Tell us what you think. Ask a question. Suggest a topic. Be a guest. Send us your stuff. SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. If you would like to advertise on any of the Solitaire Rose radio shows, you can. Just email us at SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. Subject advertising. Thanks.
And after we do that, after we hear from our lovely sponsors, we ask Joe, what's going on the eBays?
Do you know I took 350 things out of my eBay stores and donated them to the charity booth?
I did not.
Yep. And so what I'm going to do now is over the next couple days or weeks, figure out which of those items didn't sell. And since I just took a tax write-off on them. I'll put them back in the store, and then I mark them, and if they sell, I either donate the money back to the charity booth or I use it to buy other fun stuff for the charity booth next year. So right now, what's there is pretty slim, but, if you, again, deal for us listeners here, if you ever see anything you're interested in, plus I got all that fun stuff I bought from the con that I just will put on to sell right away. Well, things like this. Conan, did you remember this little character called Conan the Barbarian?
Well, I guess I do.
Do you remember what's significant about issue 242?
Isn't that the Todd McFarlane cover?
Oh, Jim Lee.
Oh, Jim Lee cover. Okay.
Yep. But it was a nice romp, and it's a fight between Conan and Red Sonja. But Jim Lee only did the cover, so don't get too excited. But I actually sold one. Cory, did you ever watch Sledgehammer?
I did not. It was during a time period when I didn't have time for TV.
Yeah, it was an interesting show, one of those a little bit ahead of its time. Didn't get good ratings, but ABC took Sledgehammer and another show, Max Headroom, and offered him a second season. Now, Sledgehammer was a self-aware show. I mean, the guy would constantly be breaking the fourth wall or making comments about things he shouldn't know. And at the very end of Sledgehammer season 1, when they thought they weren't going to get renewed, they went after a guy who had a nuclear bomb to take down the whole city. And, of course, Sledgehammer's big thing is, trust me, I know what I'm doing. So last thing we see is Sledgehammer, you can't disarm that nuclear bomb. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Commercial break comes back, you get the little teaser, and you hear the boss yelling, Hammer! That was the end of season 1. And, of course, they renewed it. And then season 2 starts. The events of this season take place 5 years before the last season. And I was like, oh, you assholes. Anyways, for some reason, Marvel coughed up a 2-issue series tied in. And what's weird about it is that Spider-Man shows up in issue 2. And I sold the set 1 and 2. Again, comics that Marvel published that will never, ever be reprinted. And they're not really worth that much. A comic that was worth much was Tarzan 207. Cory, what was interesting about... Oh, sorry. Cory, it's time to ask the Strode.
Okay.
What was the big deal about Tarzan number 207?
That was the first DC issue.
I kind of gave it to him. Yeah, it was pretty easy.
And here's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know who else was publishing Tarzan at the time?
In 1972?
Yeah.
Was Gold Key still doing it?
Nope. They had their contract with the Edgar Rice Burroughs people had expired. But somebody else in America was publishing Tarzan.
Legally or illegally?
Well, that's the thing. Carlton thought the character had gone public domain.
Dun, dun, dun.
And they published a few issues, and the Edgar Rice Burroughs people said, what the hell are you doing? They went, oh, sorry.
My bad.
Oh, and they looked awful, too. They were just awful.
Oh, by the way, they are very expensive if you decide you want them.
Oh, the Carlton issues?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they had terrible distribution. Oh, they look terrible. They just look terrible.
Even now they look terrible. That guy can't have abs like that. And the last one we'll talk about, and I'll let Cory talk about it, because this is one of those I bought and sold without reading it. Cory, tell me about Avengers versus Agents of Atlas.
Agents of Atlas was a wonderful series using... Joe, you read What If, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember What If the Avengers had formed in the 50s?
I do.
Which used the 50s heroes, Marvel Boy, Robot Man, Venus, etc., etc., and they fought the Yellow Claw, which was a series back in the 50s, with Jimmy Woo as their leader. What Agents of Atlas did is said, hey, that actually happened in the Marvel Universe. And brought the characters back and sort of made it so that they were kind of this underground superhero team that people didn't know about. There was a miniseries. The miniseries sold well enough to get a series, but then the series didn't sell well, so they did a a bunch of miniseries where the Agents of Atlas interacted with better-selling characters. Sadly, it didn't work. But if you can find that Agents of Atlas, the first book that reprints I think it's a 5-issue miniseries, it was a $35 book, hardcover, but it also reprinted all of the original appearances of the characters from the 50s and that what-if story that Roy Thomas kind of put together, but I think Don Glut wrote it, of, okay, what if the Avengers had got together in the 50s? And it was, I loved the book, absolutely loved the book. It was a shame that it never caught on. Even though, older characters, no matter what they do, they never catch on, and I always loved them. I love the Invaders. I love the All-Star Squadron. I like Agents of Atlas.
Oh, All-Star Squadron had a good run up until Crisis.
Yeah.
And you get a guy like Roy Thomas who knows this stuff. I mean, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I used to love the little things he did, like tie into the first appearance of Luthor. Superman was making some comment. Yeah, I just fought this guy Luthor. And it says, see Superman number 4. Yep, I'm going to go back to my archives and dig out that mint copy of Superman number 4 just to see it.
And one of the problems with those books was Roy Thomas kind of was able to slip that stuff in and as part of the story, whereas other people went, if Roy does it, I could do it. And they would instead go, there was this contradiction between issues 6 and 7 of Daredevil. I'm going to do a 5-part story explaining it. No, that's not what Roy did. Roy just kind of threw that stuff in as kind of an Easter egg for fun. Other people were like, I must explain this. But Agents of Atlas was one of the better series that Marvel put out in the 2000s. And it's kind of a shame. The good thing is that the writer, I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he's been writing a lot of the Batman 66. So he's kind of got that feel for older comics, making older comics that are fun for modern era.
So you're talking it's the first Agent of Atlas hardcover?
Yes. How much is that going for?
$17.
That's not bad at all.
Oh, sorry, I just bought it. So if you're going to look on eBay, forget it. I got it before you.
There you go.
That'll teach you.
Well,
and that's pretty much it. Like I said, as I rebuild my stuff, I'm going forward now. The goal is to get all the stuff ready for FallCon, which I believe is October 8th. Let me just fast forward here. 7th. It's always on a Saturday, I think.
And you have Saturdays off now.
Well, I'll have a new bid by then, but I do have Saturdays off, so hopefully they'll keep it there. I'll have to double check to see if it's. Usually they do the one day on the 7th or on a Saturday. So, but KRAYZ. If you're into checking out what is in the stores, you can go. It's stores.ebay.com/crazy comics and stuff, or go to the Solitaire Rose page. Cory's been nice enough to put a link there for me. So.
Be there. Aloha.
Yep.
Well, after we do the eBays, we get to my favorite part of the show. No. Not when Joe makes some obscure joke that's going to get us sued. It's freaking and geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on? We couldn't record yesterday because of something, so is that what you're freaking on?
Yeah. No, not really. Although I do, there we go. Sorry, I'm just paying via PayPal for my Agents of Atlas book that I got. No one else can because there's no more on eBay. I'm so greedy. Oh, wait a minute. No, Agents of Atlas Turf War, are those the series? Yeah, that must be the actual series, right? They got Turf War, aforementioned versus X-Men versus Avengers, Dark Reign. So those must all be series related.
Yeah, give me a second. I'll give you the name of the original. See here,
but
collected editions. It is Agents of Atlas, and then Agents of Atlas Dark Reign, which is issues 1 through 5. Turf Wars is issues 6 through 11. Agents of Atlas Versus, which collects Agents of Atlas versus X-Men and Avengers, and then Atlas Return of the Three-Dimensional Man, collects Atlas 1 through 5.
Now that I did buy this, I imagine an omnibus is in our future.
No,
or not.
It didn't sell well.
Yeah, I know. I'm just hoping. Oh, well. No, I just...
And the writer was Jeff Parker, whose name I couldn't remember.
Yeah. I guess I'm just looking at, the monies I've been spending on stuff, and I feel like I'm not really getting a bang for the buck on stuff that I'm reading. It becomes more apparent, especially when I'm digging through my collection, trying to find things to donate. You're like, these are all worth $1, and I paid $3 for them. Oh, so. But there's always hope, and we'll talk about that when we get to the geeking. Cory, what are you freaking on?
I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but 3 of the overnight staff quit.
I was 2 last week.
Now it's up to 3.
Woohoo!
So
Cory, you're indispensable.
Yeah.
You're number 2.
I actually got a call tonight to go in and work because the weather's going to be bad and they need to have. Normally they have 1 staff in cottage 1, 1 staff in cottage 2, then they have somebody who goes between the 2. But if the weather's bad and people have to go in the bathroom, they need 2 staff in each one for the men's room, 1 for the women's room. So I'm going to get paid to sleep in case the weather's terrible. The next 2 weeks, it's going to be still where, I'm only sleeping there on weekends. But last week of the month, oh man, I am going to be loading up on the hours. Which, I don't mind. It's just, I've kind of enjoyed coming home, taking care of things, and not having to look at the clock and go, oh, okay, 9 o'clock, I need to start getting ready so I can be out of here by 9:30 to be at work by 10. My job has been kind of crazy and stressful because we're ending a few promotions and everybody waits till the last minute on things. So we're getting call spikes. Normally I have 30 to 40 calls a day. Lately it's been 70 to 80. So that's a little stressful. And then I don't know what happened, but over the last week or so my anxiety kind of spiked a little bit. And somebody who I talk to a lot has been checking in every day saying, how's your anxiety today? How's your anxiety today? And the thing is, at least now I know that I can't point to, oh, that caused it, or that caused it, or that caused it. There are a few things that cause it to blow up. But sometimes it's just, that's what happens. And lately it has been that's just what happens. The good thing is, what is it, Memorial Day weekend is coming up? Yeah, Memorial Day weekend's coming up. I have all 3 days off. I may have to go sleep at the group home, but I'm not taking any extra. So I'm actually going to be having time to enjoy what I hope is decent weather. Joe, what are you geeking on?
Speaking of things I've enjoyed, it was weird because one of the free comic book day books, it has to do from Drawn and Quarterly. They have a new graphic novel out called Hostage by Guy Delisle, Delisle. And essentially what's happened is Christopher Andre was working for a humanitarian NGO, that's a non-government organization, in the Caucasus, Caucasus, and what happened is he was kidnapped and held for ransom. This is the area around Chechnya, Russian Federation, Naran, things like that. So it's kind of a dicey area to be with, and this is around 1997, and this basically counts his ordeal as he was kidnapped and what happened to him during that time period. And I love books like this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I am never going to work in an NGO. I can't health-wise. I'm too old. Generally, it's a young person's game. And I will probably, knock on wood, never get kidnapped for ransom, mostly because I don't have any money. Back then, it didn't really matter. It's an interesting situation, how he came to be kidnapped, what happens, how he kept himself from going insane, how he eventually escaped. The book was very riveting. I was one of these where I thought, I'll just take my time reading it. But once you get going, especially towards the end, I just read through it like crazy. And for those of you who got the free comic book day thing, check it out. See if it's worth your money. In my opinion, it is. It was a lot of very interesting. There's been other books like that I've read. I'm trying to think of who's the young girl who wrote about her life in Iran. Periscope? Persephone. Thank you. Books like that are autobiography or biography, depending on who's telling the story, and just, showing me a piece of the world that I'll probably never visit.
Tales from the Heart was the one that I enjoyed.
I got those.
From a creator who had been in the Peace Corps and actually wrote about her time in the Peace Corps. Marvel actually picked up and did a square-bound special of that.
Yeah.
And I like those autobiographical things, especially when it's somebody going to a different culture. I will buy books about people who travel. There was a chef who he wasn't a chef at the time. He was a magazine writer, and he worked in magazine publishing. And at age 40, he kind of got fed up with it and just decided he was going to travel the world and go to countries and see how the people put their food together, how they cooked, how they grew their food, how they gathered their food. And I read it years and years ago, and I really loved it. And any of those books, you gave me one called Dishwasher.
Yes.
The person said he was just going to travel the U.S. and be a dishwasher in each state. And I thought that was a fascinating book as well. Stuff that I'll never be able to do because when I was younger, I had responsibilities early. And now that I'm older, I don't know, you get to a certain age and you go, I don't want to do that. I'll read about it.
Yeah. I mean, the one I was thinking of that I just looked up is called Pyongyang. How do you say the capital? Pyongyang?
Pyongyang.
Journey in North Korea. It's a black and white graphic novel by Canadian author Guy Delizzi, published in 2004. A fascinating book. I'm fascinated by North Korea anyways. And this is before we started, playing footsie with them lately. But it was just interesting because this guy goes to North Korea to work on like some type of atmosphere or animation. And he talks about just being there. He has a handler, what he sees, how things work. So just, a fascinating book, and just a couple of them that I thought were worthy of picking up. And you go to the other side of the comic realm. For some reason, I got the urge in me to read Sandman again. Of course, we're talking the Neil Gaiman epic that I guess you could say put him right on the map.
Oh, you don't mean the Marvel villain?
No, that would be Sleeper.
Sandman
done
Sandman,
right.
The guy who fought Spider-Man.
Oh, no, he was never written by Neil Gaiman. But again, Neil Gaiman could write the phone book and make it interesting.
How about Sleepwalker, Sandman done right?
No. Definitely not. Well, for some reason, my books are scattered amongst me and my 3 daughters. So I was able to, I read the first one, which is Preludes and Nocturnes. And then I couldn't find anything else. So I read Seasons of the Mist, which was the first book I read in the comic series, which is really interesting because that's where you get introduced to all of his family. And then I went all the way to the Kindly Ones, which is basically winds up the series, read The Wake, and now I'm currently found Volume 2. I'm reading The Doll's House. So I've been really reading them out of order. And then, of course, what was the last graphic novel he did on Sandman?
I don't remember the name.
It's in the other room. It was published, and I picked up the hardcover, which was interesting because it actually takes place before the first issue of Sandman, or after the last issue. I don't know. It was a little fuzzy as you're reading it, but it was, again, just a brilliant book. And you know, I would, if I was DC, I'd be like, hey Neil, anytime you got a Sandman story, give us a call. We'll publish it for you. You know. And I think what got me going was the fact, you know, I reread American Gods, and I hadn't remembered parts of it, even though, you know, you get that conceit. I already read it. And then you reread it, and you're like, oh, I forgot some of this. Maybe I should be rereading stuff. Maybe I shouldn't be in such a hurry to sell off my collection. No, I should be. But anyways, so I'm just reading through that. If we ever get around, I mean, and, you know, here I'm sitting there as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, how did the Endless react to, like, Crisis? You know, does it even matter to them, or is it just a time when Death is, like, super busy because so many people are dying at once? Do they still exist in the New 52, or, you know, they made an artificial wall between Vertigo and the rest of the universe, but Sandman kind of skirts back and forth about it, and in a really interesting way, because even in the first issue, I'm thinking a TV show, just like American Gods. You know, they talk about where Morpheus is basically held ransom for 70 years?
Yeah.
And a part of the dreaming tries to make up for it. That's where the Golden Age Sandman came from. In Seasons of the Mist, Odin is trying to convince Morpheus to give him the key to hell that Lucifer gave him, or abdicated, emptied hell. And he, you know, of course, Odin's number one thing he's worried about is Ragnarok. And so he's made it, and suddenly he realizes there's a bunch of little mortals that are fighting inside his ball. One of them has a piece of the Sandman in him. Well, you and I would recognize it. That's the JSA, the Justice Society, from the ill-informed book, Last Days of the Justice Society, where they kind of went off forever to fight and keep, you know, Ragnarok from spilling over to the real world.
Yeah.
Don't worry, they got out. But it was just little things like that. Even in back to the first thing again, where Morpheus has to go to hell to get his I think what he's after, his helmet, I think, at the time, held by a demon. And hell is run by, what do you call it, Triumvirate?
Yeah.
And which ties into what was going on in, I think, Demon comic or something at the time. They even refer to it when Lucifer's giving his speech and telling everybody, get the hell out of hell. He says, I even gave a little rhyming demon a chance to pretend to run hell. Again, another nod to the Demon series. There's even a little throwaway line, what happened in Alan Moore's Sandman 50. You know, just little light continuity that makes sense. Yeah, what's happening in the DC universe happens here, but the Endless are the Endless. And if I ever got a chance to talk to Neil, I say, okay, I got to ask you a really geeky question. How do the Endless react to these universe-changing events? Is it, whatever? I mean, Destruction would be like, whatever. I knew they were going to do it anyways. Do they exist still? Is it just, okay, different dreams? Death had a really busy holiday. Destiny had a new page in his book. I don't know. I just find that type of stuff fascinating. And, of course, reading through Neil's thing, it's like, you know, we got to read it month after month, and we got to do it. But to sit down, you know, you could read this all in one chapter and go, that's all there is? Only how many books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Only 12 books. It's not enough, Neil. We need more. Cory, what are you geeking on?
I actually read The Button, the crossover between Batman and The Flash.
Well, I'm encouraged the fact that it's on the geeking side of the program.
Yes, I really liked it, and it also it doesn't play with the Watchmen stuff. It more plays with the fact that things are kind of a mess after Flashpoint, and the DC multiverse is kind of in shifting. And normally when Batman's involved in that stuff, you just kind of roll your eyes and go, yeah, whatever. But this really worked, and it also showed the friendship. Yeah, imagine that. Batman has friends. It showed the friendship between Batman and the Flash, which, again, I like Tom King's Batman because it's not Bruce Wayne is a mask and Batman is all that's real. It's a different take on Batman. It's not as mind-blowing as The Vision was, but it's still very good. And in the latest previews, they actually have, I think it's like the rebirth in the first 15 issues in a nice big book. And I went ahead and got that because I really like Tom King's writing, and I like his writing on Batman. The next thing that I really enjoyed that I've been reading lately is Fantastic Four Volume 3, the Omnibus. This is not the peak of the Fantastic Four. This is kind of after the peak. But it's still Kirby. It's still Stan Lee. And these are the ones that I remember picking up as reprints when I first started reading comics. When the Silver Surfer goes into the Microverse. Ben Grimm being captured by Skrulls and taken to a gangster planet. All of that stuff. The Mole Man creating a perfect house for the Fantastic Four, and when they get there, it's a trap.
It's a trap!
And it's one of the things that's made me very happy about buying these omnibuses. Yes, I could dig up all those stories. Yes, I do have them in Essentials. But this is the best presentation for the best stuff. And once I get done with this, I'm going to read Thor, because Thor is a comic that I think I read in the Essentials, but they didn't do a lot of reprints of it. And I think out of all the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stuff, Thor kind of gets the shortest shrift. So I'm looking forward to reading that. And it does have my favorite Jack Kirby action story with the Mangog. That 4-issue where Mangog is coming for the Odin sword. And it's just Thor and everybody in Asgard's trying to stop him, and no one can stop him. Nothing can stop the Mangog. He has the power of 1 billion beings. And a lot of cool stuff showed up on Marvel Unlimited, and I had some time to read it. So I actually read the Scotty Young Rocket Raccoon series. He drew the first issues and then wrote the rest. Really fun stuff. I love Scotty Young anyway. But Scotty Young doing Rocket Raccoon, that book should have sold a hell of a lot better. What is up with you people? And then Sunday night, 4 episodes of Twin Peaks, 25 years later. I love Twin Peaks so much I wanted to do an episode-by-episode Twin Peaks podcast, but I couldn't get anybody to do it with me, and I didn't want to just ramble on without somebody to bounce off of. I have not seen it when we are recording this. Oh, no, I'm breaking kayfabe, Joe. I'm breaking kayfabe!
Never last.
But first 2 episodes will be on Showtime. The next 2 episodes are going to be put up on their streaming service. And we get Twin Peaks all summer long. And David Lynch filmed it as if it was one long movie, rather than, okay, I'm going to film an episode. All right, now I'm filming an episode. So a lot of actors filmed all of their stuff at the same time. Many of the actors don't know what the story is. They've done a really good job of keeping everything secret, except I finally figured out some of the clues in the Twin Peaks novel that came out by Mark Frost. And I can tell you this from reading that. You haven't seen Twin Peaks, Joe, right?
No.
At the end of it, Dale Cooper's evil doppelganger was loose in the world. And reading between the lines and putting together the clues in the novel, he's still out there. So, a lot of fun, weird stuff is coming our way. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for an hour and a half.
Thank you.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Free Comic Book Day is only 347 days away. Plan for it. Hit my music.